We are now on day 20 of a government shutdown, and we have just emerged from a weekend full of No King's Day protesters. You know, that event where the liberals full of Trump derangement syndrome go out into the streets and try to inform the rest of America that we're living under a brutal tyrant king. And you would think with all of this taking place that Trump's approval rating right now would be in the toilet, but you would actually be wrong. And in fact, CNN, of all places, Harry Enten, our guy, he's quickly becoming our guy, Harry Enten. I swear, the man is a closet Republican. The level of enthusiasm this man has while reporting on things that make Republicans look good, like he's about to right here. He's reporting on this. Trump's net approval rating, it's not down, and the liberals are furious about it.
That's exactly right. Turns out shutdowns are different the second time around when it comes to Donald Trump. Take a look here. You know, we speak about Donald Trump shutdowns, net approval rating. We're talking 20 days into it. In 2018/2019, Donald Trump's net approval rating was already falling. The shutdown was eating into his popular support. It was down 3 points already at this particular point and would fall considerably more. It was very much on the decline. You come over to this side of the screen, this shutdown hasn't eaten into Donald Trump's support at all. His net approval rating is actually up a point in terms of his popular support. So the bottom line is this. The first shutdown during Trump's first term, 2018-2019, was hurting Donald Trump. This one is not hurting him at all. There's no real reason Donald Trump might say, at least when it comes to popular support, I want to get out of this shutdown.
And so, even 20 days deep into a government shutdown where liberals are trying their hardest to convince the public that this is Trump's fault, his net approval rating is up 1 point. Even after a weekend full of No King's Day protesters, his net approval rating is up 1 point. Liberals are devastated by this. However, on the conservative end of the spectrum here, I'm here to inform you, this is not shocking at all. All you have to do is follow reliable pollsters to understand that President Donald Trump has actually had one of the most stable years from an approval rating standpoint that I've ever seen a president have. This is Rasmussen Reports, my favorite pollster. He's one of the more accurate ones. I followed him during the election last year, and he was pretty spot on. This has been the approval rating for the entirety of Trump's presidency this year so far. You can see starting back on January 23rd here, with the approval rating at 56%, liberals were furious at that percentage back then. But what you can really notice here is it's really riding the line of 50%. And you can see some dips. When was this? The April 8th tariffs. Yeah, that's not shocking, right? 47% there. But then it just goes back up and it goes down again at certain points. Probably some weird tweets about China or something that upsets the economy causes that. But this is literally but what we've been tracking. Rasmussen specifically has been tracking the entire year. Look, I mean, low points here, 47, 48%, but then right back there, more spikes up to 53. Low point of 46, spikes back up to 51. And Rasmussen's not the only pollster that's been tracking this. I also follow this one. This is the America First Insights, another great page, great website, great YouTube channel, all of it. And they have also come up with similar results when it comes to Trump's approval weighted polling chart here. And you can just see it's very consistent. And the liberals hate this because the liberals rely heavily on their extremely biased and skewed pollsters that tell them that Trump's approval rating is somehow at 36% or some nonsense, which doesn't make sense compared to the Democrat Party approval rating, which is absolutely in the toilet. There's just no way that the president right now has a lower approval rating than the Democrat Party. And you can see this is a tweet from the America First Insight, even with the bias adjusted, showing that 50.2% disapprove, 49.8% approving of the president right now is ridiculous. At this point in President Donald Trump's presidency, he is much further ahead when it comes to these ratings than Obama was even. And you know, the liberals are furious and they don't understand how this is possible. I'm actually going to explain very easily and a little bit later here in the video how this is possible and why it's happening. Why Trump's approval rating went up, his net approval rating. It's really actually not that hard to understand. But first, back to Harry Enten here because he addresses a major important question when it comes to the blame game, the government shutdown. The Democrats want so badly for you to blame Trump and the Republicans for this shutdown, like with the narrative we see coming out of Senator Elizabeth Warren here, for instance.
It has been 1 whole week since Republicans shut down the government. So why did they close the government? Because Republicans decided they would rather shut down the entire government than lower costs and save health care for millions of Americans. Donald Trump and Republicans in Congress are knocking 15 million people off their health insurance, driving up the cost of health care for everyone else, closing rural hospitals, shutting down community health centers, and much, much more, all so that they can fund giant tax cuts for billionaires. Those are Republican priorities.
So what's the deal? Are people buying that? Do people actually believe that this is Trump's fault and the Republicans' fault? Here's Harry Enten to clear all of that up.
Hey, what about the question of blame? Okay, you see here, you see Donald Trump's net approval rating was down 2018 to 2019. You talk about 2025 as net approval rating is up. It comes down to the blame game, a game I loved to play when I was younger. Blame Trump for the shutdown a great deal. In 2018/2019, 61%, more than 3 in 5 Americans blame Trump a great deal for that particular shutdown. You come over to this side of the screen, look at this. It's a different world. It's a different world. 48% of Americans blame Trump a great deal for this particular shutdown. So it's more than 3 in 5 back in 2018/2019. It's less than half, a drop of 13 points. Again, it's no real wonder that Donald Trump at this point, looking at the shutdown, says, you know what, it's not actually harming me politically, in large part because he's getting less of the blame.
And so the bottom line is people are just flat out no longer believing Democrats. They're not falling for the same tired rhetoric and narrative that they used to fall for even just 10 years ago. And why is this happening? Well, actually, just about 2 weeks ago, Harry Enten, once again, may have actually exposed the dramatic changes we're seeing now when it comes to the way information is now spread to the American public and when it comes to just what people are or aren't willing to believe anymore.
I just want to know that if I say it on social media, John, it's 100% true. Totally. You can trust everything, including that the New York Yankees stink. But take a look here. I think this is a very clear shift. I would argue it's a monumental shift because traditionally speaking, folks who got their news off of social media were Democrats. You go back to 2021, 52% of Democrats got their news off of social media compared to just 45% of Republicans. Jump ahead now to this year. What do we see? We see the Republican number up like a rocket. Now you get 55% of Republicans who get their news on social media compared to just 52% of Democrats. So Democrats have stayed steady over the last 4 years at this point in the Joe Biden administration, while Republicans have seen a 10-point climb, and now more Republicans get their news off of social media. And if you're on social media a lot like I am, I don't think that's too much of a surprise.
And so there you have it. A lot of this actually does hinge back to the moment Elon Musk purchased Twitter and turned it into X. I personally love using X nowadays. I only recently started using it when I created this YouTube channel back in March, and I've discovered the effectiveness of X when it comes to staying up to date on political events, staying up to date with news, what's trending. X is, I would almost say, superior at this point to a lot of other social media sites when it comes to that, and especially even to the mainstream media. I know things faster than other people do because I am on X all the time because of this YouTube channel. I hear about news that breaks literally 1 or 2 hours after I've heard it from mainstream media. And so X really is the hinging point here in all of this. A lot of the success of the current modern day GOP literally hinged on Elon Musk purchasing Twitter and ensuring that it remained free for people in general. Now, back to Harry Enten here.
If you're on Twitter, you've noticed a shift here.
Oh, I would think so. I think there are a lot of folks who have been on Twitter and may have realized, wait a minute, there seem to be a lot more Republicans in my feed, especially since Elon Musk took over. And oh my goodness gracious, what a tremendous, monumental shift on the regular news consumers on Twitter/X. You go back to 2021, the party ID margin. Democrats were 37 points more likely, or 37 points more likely to be a Democrat on Twitter or X than a Republican. Jump ahead to this side of the screen. It's completely changed around. Oh my goodness gracious. Now it's a 14-point lead for Republicans on Twitter/X. We're talking about a 51-point shift in the margin, and John and I were talking about it just before. You can see it with your own eyes. This is polling reflecting what you're seeing in the social media real world, where all of a sudden, John, you just see a lot more Republicans in your feed.
I like the word social media real world there.
It's real to me, gosh darn it.
And so, again, with the purchase of Twitter by Elon Musk, this has caused a wave of GOP users, Republican users, to be ushered in now to X. As you can see there off the reporting, a massive difference over the last 4 years. As a result of this, we've had a shattering of the liberal narrative all over social media. I would argue, in fact, that the news is being reported more fairly now than I've ever experienced it be reported in my entire lifetime. Because yeah, you have these social media pages that are clearly Republican or Democrat ones reporting on the news in a biased way, but because of the ease of access of social media by each individual person living in America, you're now free to do your own research and come to your own conclusions, which is exactly what I do, for instance, or what anybody should do to some degree, despite the kind of pages that you're following that report the news. For instance, I'll point you right back again to Senator Elizabeth Warren. Here are her thoughts from just 3 days ago, where she posted a very awkward selfie-recorded video in her office, camera way too close to her face, talking about, once again, the government shutdown. Take a listen to what she has to say here for a couple seconds, and then stay tuned for the point where I can just shatter the narrative by doing just 10 seconds of research to make her look like an absolute fool and a hypocrite.
It's week 3 of a government shutdown, and people are getting angry. The thousands of federal workers that Trump fired to punish Democrats are angry. Americans who rely on those workers to protect us from disease are angry. The air traffic controllers who still have their jobs are angry that they have to show up to work but aren't getting paid. Families who just got their health insurance notices and saw that their premiums are skyrocketing are angry. And you're probably thinking, if the American people are angry, then Republicans in Congress, surely they're trying to do something about it. Nope, wrong. Heck, Republicans in the House of Representatives aren't even here. Speaker Mike Johnson told them just to take a vacation. You heard that right. Not negotiation, vacation with a V. The government is shut down, and Republicans refuse to do anything about it.
Now, because of the freedom of social media, I can literally shatter that narrative in 3 seconds by saying 52 out of 53 Republicans are voting to fund the government. Only 3 Democrats are voting similarly. Not to mention the fact that because of social media, I was able to easily research the fact that the bill proposed by Republicans to fund the government was the same bill that Democrats had drafted much earlier on before Trump was sworn into office. So they're literally using the Democrats' bill to try to fund government, and the Democrats, because they hate Trump so bad, are refusing their own bill that they drafted to fund the government, all so that they can shut down the government. It's really that easy. You won't hear that reported that way on a source like MSNBC. But with the rise of YouTube and the rise of social media and X, now we're getting more accurate reporting without the liberal narrative that shields them. And the Democrats aren't used to this. They're not used to not being protected. They're not used to not being shielded from that form of criticism or from having their lies exposed. They're used to being able to just lie like this. And they're used to there being no way to shatter the narrative. Just 15, 20 years ago, CNN would pick this up, report on it, and say what a brave woman Elizabeth Warren was for reporting from this in her office. But it's not being reported that way now. Now I just make fun of her for holding her camera way too close to her face. I don't want to see her face that close. Gross. But I promised you I'd make her look like a hypocrite, because this was her talking about government shutdowns back in 2013. Who was president then? Obama.
The least we can do, the bare minimum that we can do, would be to pass a continuing resolution to keep the doors open and the lights on. We can ensure that over 1 million federal workers aren't simply sent home for no reason. We can avoid a government shutdown. This is democracy. And in a democracy, hostage tactics are the last resort for those who can't win their fights through elections, can't win their fights in Congress, can't win their fights for the presidency, and can't win their fights in the courts. For this right-wing minority, hostage-taking is all they have left, a last gasp of those who cannot cope with the realities of our democracy.
Bravo, I agree. Now, I only agree, of course, with that being applied to modern day, but what an amazing self-own by Elizabeth Warren on the Democrat Party. Everything she said there is a principle that is true today. The Democrats are the ones that can't cope with democracy, they can't cope with the reality of the circumstance, and they certainly can't win elections. And so now they're holding the government hostage to try to get their way. Thank you, Elizabeth Warren, and thank you, X, for providing such a beautiful video from 12 years ago. And once again, I want to leave everybody off with some final thoughts here. These facts right here, for instance, 70 to 80% of cable news viewers are age 55 plus. And what does that tell you? That tells you that the main demographic of people that ate up the lying liberal narrative spread by mainstream media are beginning to die out. That's the harsh reality of all this, if you're over 55 and you're watching this video, for instance. But then again, if you've made it this far in this video and you're 55, chances are you're actually of sound mind, body, and spirit, because chances are you're a conservative. But that's really what's happening here. And the mainstream media is not making up for lost ground. They're not drawing in the younger demographics. Because as somebody who rides that line between Gen Z and millennial, I can tell you confidently, I do not watch mainstream media unless I'm using clips of it to make videos for YouTube here. And in some ways, I guess mainstream media will always play some sort of a role because they do have the funds to send out all of these reporters and to get the scoops on these stories and stuff. So they'll always be around in some capacity, but they're losing their foothold in society and they're not going to be able to gain it back. And we're seeing the stark differences of that show up on a day like No King's Day, for instance. You know, No King's Day, that day that Bernie Sanders was celebrating on X, Trump on No Kings. The demonstrations were very small, very ineffective. Bernie goes, "Oh, really? Well, 7 million people came out to the largest demonstration day in our history. Americans are clear. They don't want authoritarianism, oligarchy, or a doubling in their insurance premiums." And this is a famous page on X, Cat Turd, using Grok to fact check Bernie Sanders. You gotta love the cruel twist of fate here, where they used to fact check us on social media, and now the Democrat Party is so weak, they're the ones getting fact checked. Grok says organizer claims of 7 million rely on self-reported small events without verification, but city-specific data paints a different picture. New York City, around 100,000. Boston, 80 to 100,000 by police estimates. DC, 50K. Seattle, 90K. San Diego, 50K. Los Angeles and Atlanta, 20K combined. Aggregating verifiable reports from major hubs and locals yields 1 to 1.5 million nationwide, not 7 million. The hype exceeds reality as in past rallies. Independent analysis aligned closer to this, discounting unscrutinized totals. But all of that to point out that this clip right here shows you the difference, the stark difference when it comes to age demographics. This was No King's Day. Let me know what you notice in this clip. Did you see a single young person in that crowd? I certainly didn't. Why could that be? Well, could it be because of everything I just stated in this video? Age 55 plus still consuming cable news networks, while everybody under that age is going to social media for their information now, with the increase of GOP users on platforms like X to do their own research and come to their own conclusions? Could it be that the very generation, the boomers, that told us, people like me growing up, that we were the most selfish, entitled, lazy piece of shit generation out there, actually are the ones that turned out to be the most selfish, entitled, lazy piece of shit generation? And stupid, too. And I'm aware most of my audience are boomers, and hey, if you're a boomer and you're a conservative, you're not the problem. You're hella cool. Every time I talk with a boomer who's a MAGA conservative, they're funny as hell. But the bottom line is, they're a tainted generation. And they're gullible, and they grew up with cable news and mainstream media being reliable. At least they thought it was that way. And they're not on social media, and so they eat up the lying liberal narrative and the liberal rhetoric. Even if they have an inclination towards conservatism because they're older, they still don't like Trump, a lot of them. And that's the difference. But when it comes to young people, under 55, the rise of social media, the rise of independent journalism, channels like this one, which you should absolutely subscribe to because this is by far the best channel on YouTube. It's not even close. So if you haven't subscribed yet, I really don't know what the hell you're doing. But this is just one small example of that. And the mainstream media is losing their foothold. As long as social media remains free and uncensored, and people like Elon Musk pave the way on that to ensure it stays that way, then the mainstream media will never regain control. The Democrats will never regain the same control that they've had over the American people via their lying narrative for the last 50 years ever again. And that's probably the best news when it comes to America going forward in the future. What are your thoughts and opinions on all of this, though? Let me know in the comments down below, and thanks so much for watching.